Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I I don't know if this is currently streaming. Actually, I'm stupid. Should actually check for the actual stream. Okay, so it's actually receiving video. Uh, yeah, I'll be responding. Well, actually, if people are actually asking questions, I'll be both checking into the main stage chat for Ponies Online and my own chat. Um, Today I'm mostly just gonna cover older projects because I realized that you know it's quite interesting to look back at older projects, and since I don't want to go with spoiling the next projects and all, I don't want to I want people to be able to see the stream without worrying about spoiling the experience for future projects. Um, so mostly you're just gonna cover the beginning of Harmony. I've seen a lot of people who, you know, seen a lot of people comment, and some people who are really curious about how I approach a project, because that project was quite interesting since it was technically my third project in Toon Boom. I used a lot of new techniques to make it feel a bit more like a cinematic experience. Of course, you look at that and you're thinking, well, it's a YouTube video, so why bother making it cinematic? You can see, for example, people for example, if you look at TV shows that try to be more cinematic, um, because just the idea of using the language of cinema to make more interesting framing for scenes can really make the whole thing shine. And of course, since I also work in movies, the fact that those YouTube videos can feel more like movies can be pretty good. Uh, Also, showing them at conventions on big screens, having that as a possibility, you want to actually push the envelope. So, I'm gonna cover a few of the scenes that and oh, actually, I already got a question. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna answer those questions while I'm at it. I actually for collaborating with other animators, that's a question I've got a lot. Um, Basically, one of the issues, of course, is that when it comes to animation, mostly go with three main software, almost four. If you count Maya, well, if you count Maya and Blender as two separate things, because they are, but for most people, it's just 2D. Well, it's just 3D animation. So collaborating with other people can be a challenge. For example, there can be projects where I can contribute to one aspect like backgrounds, and the other can contribute with animation. It can work pretty well with some animators, with some others can be pretty challenging. When it comes to character animation, I would need to find someone who animates in Toon Boom, or something that looks like Toon Boom, that kind of looks like my own my own style. So it can be challenging. There was Solidarity, which was a collab project. They call them multi animator projects, or MAP. Basically, the idea that you make a project where you basically cut it up in sections, and the animator is basically given free will for what he wants it to look like. It just needs to match the continuity. There was a lot of reanimation projects where they took a cartoon that that was popular, or sometimes it's a movie, and um, basically ask people, well, let's try to make all your own bits in your own style, and try to make something that just blends well. Uh, there was they reanimated old classics. They reanimated. Well, actually, it's not even a reanimation, but there was a collab that was basically redoing all of Star Wars. And everybody could do whatever they wanted. Some did animation, some did live action, and they basically did with as little money as they could. It just was hilarious. Uh, there was Steam Ham, which, of course, I mean, it's a classic. But all of that, it's mostly just a parody. So making it a parody, um, since it's supposed to be, having fun with the original material, the fact it's not that doesn't blend in terms of style doesn't really matter. Just a celebration of artists, just celebrating other artists. Um, so yeah, the fact that you can, you can look at that as one way animators can collaborate. Solidarity was basically that, but with pony music, and there was no actual material that we had to follow in terms of visual composition. So a lot of us just went with what we wanted it to be like. We had one scene where we had Twilight giving a speech. It was quite a challenge because it was a bit late. Basically, a lot of all the animators that were doing other shots basically already had their own plan, and I didn't really think much about it. And I realized, well, I need to match the continuity of the scene in a way that actually works. There was a scene with basically Twilight was talking and was facing Twilight, and the other one was also facing Twilight but in a different style and different angle. So I was thinking, well, I could just do it her facing Twilight, and I realized, well, she's talking about her friends, so shouldn't I focus on them instead? So what I did was basically just do B camera, basically pointing at her friends. So you see what you see a bit how they feel towards that, and it was pretty cool because with the lights I had Twilight's shadow on the ground that actually made her shape, so you could actually see what she was doing at the time as well. I could have just put the camera behind her so you'd see her with the shot now, but you'd lose a bit of her friend and you wouldn't know where to look exactly. So yeah. Oh, the creation of the season 5 finale parody. Actually, I have the original file somewhere. Gonna open up. I think I put it in Stars. No, I put it in Snowkicker. I actually gonna check on that monitor. It's true, it's on that computer. So usually I put that one in. Did I put that in Shorts? YouTube. Oh, Shorts are not on this one, they're on Starstruck. So yeah, actually I named all my hard drive after ponies. So documents. I guess I can talk about that one first because it's one of the first ones. So deleted scene. Oh wait, no, that's the final file. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff. So the whole thing was not very complex to do. Shots. Guess I can open up Flash real quick. Actually, I'm gonna talk about Flash first because a lot of people are, still using Flash. It was quite interesting because the whole production, I was basically doing that right before the finale. The season 5 actually showed up, so I knew in a way that I knew that Starlight Glimmer, there was like 99.999% chance that she would be reformed in a way. So I thought, well, there's already the joke that she already fits because Starlight, Twilight, get Sunset, and that one I had every Moon Dancer. I was thinking of Trixie, but a lot of people. Trixie is less like Twilight. She's more, she's quite interested in magic, but more in the performance of it than just, doing cool stuff with it. So the background itself for the opening shot was quite interesting because there is actually a whole background that I was working on at the time. It was for a short called Derpycopter. And the idea was, I basically just wanted to joke about the way that a lot of fandom animators just back then, the animated Pig's Eye, that were just, they were basically landing, because the problem with the characters is that their legs, they would basically just hover in place at the point where you have the you know, the pointer would land, and then they just extend their legs, and that's it. And basically the idea was that you had derpy hooves with Dinky on her back, and she would just go and just make sounds of helicopter with her tongue, go, and I really can't do that live. But basically the whole joke was that she was doing that, and then you see Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash just next to her, and they're just really confused, and all she just turns it around and she says, "What?" And it was a whole joke. And problem with that is that doing that, of course, you know, you have to find the time to record with the voice actress. You need to. So I needed to find a good time to record, and I could never get that time for that. So I basically shelved it, and I already had that background because I thought, well, you know, let's make a nice background. Kind of looks paint. Yeah. So basically just vectored it. I had all of that. I tried to do some cool brush stroke stuff with it. And I had the whole thing because the whole idea is that basically, actually, it's kind of funny because Canterlot was not supposed to be there, but the other way. And basically, the whole thing was just that. So I realized, well, I have the view that I can use for an establishing shot, so I just put the cutie map that I actually had back from Dinky's Destiny, because we had to vector a lot of stuff for that project. So I realized, well, let's put that. So the first shot was already done. So I just put a little zoom in, which is kind of funny because actually, let's go. It's a Ryzen 9, and Flash still struggles with it. It's really a show that they're really bad at. They were really bad at optimizing it, because it's all mostly just runs in CPU. So you have the shot of Twilight, which is really simple. It's really just Twilight. She just blinks and she just goes up. So I also had a rule to basically just have a good place to just look at them. So I have that. I have just Twilight. Then the next shot, when you cut to oh, and the little tweak that I did for that one that I haven't done since, but I realized that the color palette of the inside of the castle just made more sense with yellows and purples and than purples and greens. So you already have Spike that just pops in the frame. It's quite interesting with that one because you have basically you have Spike. You have this run animation which was actually recycled from Project Undercloud 2. So you look at Spike and basically you have the run. Originally the run. Basically what I did was that I found a place where he ran. It basically just took it as reference. So you had that. So it was a nice. Basically it was just a nice loop, and. So one of the things, for example, the tail, that basically, if you look at it closely, you see that it kind of curves. Nowadays with Toon Boom, I'd basically just go with a curve. That's it. So you basically have that. So you have him, he stops, and as he stops, I needed him to basically just stretch like that. And as he stretched, he just stepped back. And you see his foot just steps back, and then you have like the little bounce back, because to make it more bouncy. It really sells it. There was also held frames here, because basically I just kept that pose, and by keeping the pose it's more solid like that. It's kind of why when you look at animation done in 2, it just feels more solid for some reason. Just holding that pose really helps. Then you stretch him. I didn't really stretch much his head, and looking back, maybe I could. So there we go. And you just go, whoa, wow. Yeah, really go, wow. So and you go with that, and then you have his expression. He has his eyebrows up. So basically you have this. You had also animated a little some contact shadows under. I also basically just took the character and put in the ground. Basically just did some perspective to just get a shadow later in After Effects. There we go. And he goes, and then the shot 4. Shot 4 is pretty straightforward as well. The whole joke was really just, you know, it was kind of lazy looking back, but you have basically just one close-up, and basically with the close-up what I did was just doing basically just cutting to basically just cropping in to basically show, oh, so you have twilight, sunset, moon dancer, starlight, and the time actually it was back in season 5, so I didn't realize later that it would change your main style, and I think when the season 6 opener started, and I even realized that it changed your main style. It's kind of funny as well if you look at the basically steam coming from the T. It's actually recycled animation as well. There's a lot of stuff that was recycled. Basically that animation, if I copy it, you'll understand really quick what this was supposed to be. Properties. Get rid of the alpha. Oh right, it was still some alpha. The whole animation for Steam is just a flag that I did back in the days, and I just reused it. It was quite funny with that. And actually, I think that one was made back with Project on the Cloud. It's been a while. And the final shot was really straightforward as well. Well, I say final. There was also credits. It basically just close up. We're just goes, are y'all related to something? And the one shot is basically just going with the whole shot is basically just going with mouthpieces. There was no other animation anywhere.
Are you all four related or something?
And that was it. I also did some basically just skewed and did some tweening for the mouth just to get a bit more action. That was it. And it was also the grid that I put just because the whole idea is that he's mostly where if you look at where he is, he's supposed to be more on that side, and he's basically pointing to the right. As he is pointing to the right, obviously the reaction. Although it was quite tricky because the whole thing is supposed to be, frame in the center. All right. Oh yeah, I don't have the writing permission for that. But you basically have that. So he's looking at them, and probably should have put the camera a bit lower to frame them better. But I also kind of wanted the hull to look fine. So yeah, that's basically it. That's only 5 shots, and I think I did that in less 3 days. And the whole reasoning was that I wanted it to be released like I think it was a day or 2 after the premiere. There was also, I wanted it to look good, so I put some bloom around the lights. I put the I put some basically some Fresnel in the ground. I wanted to be reflective. It really helped on that one. And the final joke, because of course I wanted to joke, you have the credits that I wanted to do with the styled credits of the show. So I basically just took screen caps to get the exact layout. I even had the layout of the copyright disclaimer. What was I watching on the... Okay, I don't remember what I was watching on that other screen, but yeah, to give you a good idea of how old this is, the credits actually made a reference. It was a reference to Cool Cat. When I say I'm not a lawyer, Derek, because it was He was basically attacking people who were making reviews of Cool Cat Saves the Kids. For that one, there was actually I did something similar with the I did the one with Shining Armor throwing Flurry Heart, and that one basically just said, "Look, don't send this as me. I'm just making ads for your toys, please." And that was basically it. So, yeah, that one production was not very complex. It's only 5 shots plus credits. I don't even know why credits are listed shot 7, even though there's 6 shots. But that happens. Also, why Facebook? Oh well. Oh, right, I'm not in silent mode. Expand. There we go. That was still called Do Not Disturb. But yeah, that whole production was back in 2015 actually. That was back right after Good Morning Baltimore. After Dinky's Destiny as well. It was actually before Luna's Determination. So a lot of it was just recycling some other stuff, because I realized at that point that what I wanted it to look good, but I also had 3 days, so that's bound to happen. I'm quite glad, seeing how those details just turned out in the final one. It was nice. I also had some detailed shadows, and they were really soft, but they actually look fine. So it was nice. Sorry. So yeah. Should I? Yeah, I guess I should bring up what I was actually coming in to show to you. So actually, I was talking about the beginning of Harmony. There's a lot of things on that project that were actually tried for the first time. One of the ideas with that project, I wanted to have a scene where you had Celestia basically just running and being teleported, and one of the challenges was to actually get the actual running that would go along with the perspective, but the perspective would actually shift. It's quite interesting if you look at the actual animation. The animation is basically let's see, where did I put it? It's kind of a shame in Toon Boom. There's a center and selection option, but the center and selection option breaks the all the things you open on the timeline. So basically, the animation for that. There we go. So basically, the animation is just a loop of just a hoof that just goes. And so it's quite interesting, because if you look at the original animation, there we go. If you look at the actual animation with the things, I guess I could lower the volume a bit. You have dusk turns, and at the moment where they're running, the one thing I wanted to make clear, because I wanted to focus on it, you hear dun 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 dun, and I wanted it to actually match the beat of the song, so I had to make a run cycle that would actually go along with the music. So I had actually I disabled it, but I had the music as a reference. So I had the so you really feel it feels less like a run and more like a trot. And one of the things I did, because if you look, basically it's the same animation for both legs. It's just offset out of time, and it was it. And so I had this part. I also had the back legs, which looking back I could have done a better job with that, but that happens. So yeah, have this. And I had the body itself and the head, and basically the thing is that as the body just drops because of the whole weight, the fact that she trots, as it happens, the thing is that the head, you know, it rests on the body, and it's not perfect. What I wanted it to actually feel, and feel, actually I'm going to disable deformer so you can see a bit better. But as you see the body just go down, you can see that the head follows a bit later, so you really feel like there's some bounce in the head. I also did with Luna as well. And actually, one cool thing, because they're offset with time, and they're all in deformer. So what I can do is just shift the time on that one. There was also I did some rotation, because the whole head is technically in 3D space. I can actually rotate it to get some good angles. Was it that one? No, that's for Luna. It's quite interesting as well, because since Luna is on Celestia, I had to put Luna's rig inside of Celestia's rig. I think it was this one. And there we go. So I have set that by 2. And there's another one somewhere. No, that's for the main that actually shifts. So when I disable it, you're going to see it's going to be a lot more stiff. Actually, it's not the stiffest. Actually, I'm going to disable entirely the head rotation. So actually, it's pretty cool. I can just, since I always keep all the files for all the scenes, I can just disable it. And actually, I'm going to take this off as well. And you already feel, if you look at the animation, that it doesn't feel right. It already helps a bit, because our main is a deformer as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take the deformer, and I'm going to get rid of it. So I can just get rid of it. Get rid of that part as well, which is also in deformer. Because if you look here, all the black dots are just keyframes. Basically, I'm telling the computer to go from one point to the other, and what it does, it basically just does a linear correlation between the two. And the problem with that is that it's very stiff. You really feel like it's just a robot. Like if I went with the arm and just rotated it like that, that's it. Would really feel wrong. So one of the things you can do is actually put lots of layers of animation together. For example, to make it feel more human, I can have that part of the arm that actually follows. So instead of going this, actually it's not the best example, because I'm actually doing one thing I shouldn't do. Let's say I just do that. It just doesn't feel right. So if I had a bit more movement, I can actually feel like there's something that's a bit more, just adding that layer. There's also just having the setback, because if you look at the moment I snap, as I snap I shake a bit. It's one of the things you can do. In this case, one of the things I wanted to do was to have the hair that would actually follow. It was all set on deformer, and what the cool thing is, deformer can deform in more than one position. So the links that were farther away would actually move farther away in time as well. Kind of like, do I have, well, I got my keys. And I dropped my pen. But basically you have this point, as the top, as the top goes, the rest actually follows a bit later, kind of like a pendulum. So you basically get that, and as well when you get the movement that stops, you have the rest of the movement that actually stops later in time. So doing that for hair, it's actually pretty cool. It actually makes it feel more lively. Back in Flash, one of the problems with that is that, actually the show has that as well, and actually I could compare it. There. Basically, you have a second shot when you have Twilight that actually just bounces. You see that the hair actually has that bounce after the animation, like she goes, from one position, and as she goes to the other position, just bends from one to the other. It's basically just done by having the main that actually kind of goes down and then up, kind of like a spring. But the problem is that you see the position is basically just skewing and kind of feels stiff. For her bangs, kind of works because it's short, but if you look at other characters like Rarity, her mane had to be split in multiple parts, and the fact that it's so complex really makes it a nightmare. So just the fact that with Toon Boom I had the opportunity to actually put it on a deformer as well. Actually, I'm going to show it later what you can actually do. But if you look without that, her hair just feels stiff. And if you compare with her tail, actually can actually enable. Basically, her tail was not very complex. There's a deformer here and a deformer here, and basically just having that. Basically just having that set to basically skew with those two like that really helped. And yeah, I basically with everything else that just was offset like that just ruins it a bit. And yeah, no, the animation for Twilight was not frame by frame. It was basically just well, actually, if you look at this, I did some keyframes that were frame by frame, but that's pretty much it. It's not even very complex frame by frame. It's basically just using the skew tool like that. So of course, if you look at other scenes, for example, where there's the one with Twilight and Canterlot in the Crystal Empire Part 1, where you have her sing, and as she sings, her hair just flows to the wind. It's basically just one loop, just keeps going. With Celestia and Luna, that loop is basically just 80 frames. Actually, back in season 1 and 2, it was just 40, done on twos, and basically just loop back and forth. Well, actually, I say back and forth. Basically, just loop just one way, and it just worked. A lot of people didn't really notice, and because those shots are really short, you don't really see it snap back. When I needed to find a reference for Luna, it was really a nightmare to try to find the one spot where she wouldn't move, and it would last more than 4 seconds. I ended up finding one in Luna Eclipsed. So yeah, you have, actually, I guess I have one good shot I could show from the Fall Sunset Shimmer, actually. The Fall Sunset Shimmer scenes, sunset intro. So I guess I think it was second one. Nope, that was a balcony shot. There we go. It was pretty cool for that one shot because the whole shot is just basically just tracking. And the the sunset animation is on a card, and that was it. So if you look at the wind in her hair, actually I have another shot that's actually even better. But the wind in her hair was basically just that. Scene 1, scene 6. Hope I'm having the right one. How come I need so many layers to perform animation? That's actually pretty interesting. Basically, it's a necessity because there's a lot of stuff. If you look, for example, there's basically our mouth. That's one layer. There's the hair that are a separate layer. Cutie mark is its own layer. The mane is a couple layers. There's a couple layers that are invisible right now, but will come back later as she. But yeah, you have. You basically have this animation, which is basically just one loop, just keeps going, and you see that that part that just twirls. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna shift back, so the end point is at the same point as the beginning point, and you'll see what happens. You see how stiff it becomes just by doing that, and if I shift it back and back, so the furthest point is moves further in time. Just look at that, and you already see something a bit more what I can do is actually make it more extreme. So go 1, 2, 3. Actually, the plus and minus key actually shift back and forth in time. So you have this. Oh, actually, it's not the best example because that one actually shifts back, so it becomes stiffer. Because basically, one keyframe that you have here, it moves so farther in time that it actually comes back to where it should have been. But you can actually see the loop itself. So just animating hair like that is pretty cool. There's other projects where what I would do is that I would put turbulence, and turbulence is basically just adding some noise and to basically just shift points in 3D space or 2D space here. So you have the wind in her hair like that flows. And at some point I realized that it's good, but it's not great. And I actually improved that technique when it came to making dusk in the beginning of Harmony. Because at some point I needed him to, there's lots of wind and he's in the air. So I had this part where the camera just goes really fast towards him. Which was pretty cool because as the camera went closer to him, he started getting that reaction to just amplify the actual movement. And if you look at the movement itself, this bit, still in deformers because those deformers can actually curve the whole thing. So, and it was also done with that shift in time. But one of the things I realized is that if you actually go with the inside of the main and actually shift it back and forth, you can actually have something that just feels more 3D. So you see the inside here that actually just shifts. And it was really cool because just the intensity really made it feel like something big was going on. So just having that part, doing that in Flash could be done. Masking actually works pretty well in Flash, although you cannot reverse the direction of masking. So you could actually have the inside that actually animates like that for a lot of stuff. So you go with this, and you had multiple layers. So I offset that part as well, so it actually moved at a different time. So it actually felt more like hair that just clumps and moves at its own pace. I also had a little tweak I did. As he turns his head, you actually feel like that part actually moves along with it. Although that part was also offsetting it. But at that point, it's his horn. Oh, actually, I'm offline. Oh, it's probably YouTube that actually misbehaves. I don't know. Okay, I hope people haven't lost me. It would be kind of a shame. Although it's not the first time something happens. So if not, let me try to find the there we go. So if you look at that point here, if you look at that point, you see that the basic top part of the hair actually stops moving because the horn is in the way. And it was a bit less distracting, so you really feel like it draws the attention to his tears as he turns his head. So when you look back, and the camera just pulls in, he turns his head, and as he turns his head, you cut back to. So let's see if. Nope, still streaming. I think it's just dashboard that actually misbehaves. Okay, so I've been told that the panel after mine is actually cancelled, so I think if I get more questions, I'll be able to actually answer them with the time I want. But yeah, there's also a couple tricks that actually makes it less stiff. In part, just the fact that there's shading everywhere. You focus a bit less on the animation, you focus more on what the animation is about. Just the, just the mood lighting and all. So okay, so I think dashboard is just broken for me. Okay, no, it still works. So let's go back with the questions I missed. What's that curly line grafting in animation software? Oh, so you have, for example, one of the things you can go with is, for example, you have the, oh, actually, let me find something that actually shows better. So you have this part here, basically it's set in a function. Basically it's called the function graph, and the whole thing with the function graph is that you have the animation basically tells, basically what you can do is can give it some kind of ease. So if you want it to start really fast and then slow down, you can do it like that. If you want it to start slow and then move fast, you can do it like that. It's basically that. It's not perfect. For example, that one, it just mixes the whole path together, and can also mix the whole quaternion as well. So you don't really have much choice. It basically moves in the 3 axes together at once instead of giving you a choice. You can actually change it in one of the settings, but the problem is that it's set by default like that. So you basically have dusk as a camera, just, it starts slow, it moves fast, and as it comes, it actually slows down. It kind of helps to, basically, you're thinking of a camera that moves. When you actually go with that easing, you really think of a camera that actually, you go with the camera and you push it, and as you start to push it, it's a bit, it's heavy, so you have some slowdown at first. You have the get the peak speed in the middle, and then you try to get the camera that stops without having something that just feels sudden, feel like a jerk. And as you do, you just slow down your own movement. Doing that with animation like that actually makes it feel a bit more real. It doesn't need to be something like shaky cam, where you have the camera that just shakes randomly like that. You can make it feel a bit more, a bit more godlike, where you have the camera just stand still in place in the sky, even though it couldn't if you actually shot it yourself. Doing that with animation like that makes the animation feels a bit more appealing. So I've seen a lot of problems with some animations where you have the camera that just stands there and just starts to move, like all of a sudden. You don't even have a couple of frames to just start the movement, and it's not even a movement where something really intense, like, I don't know, someone pops in the frame and the camera needs to turn in a reaction. You really feel like it's it feels like you get the wait, did I say let's go back to depression? No, wait, not with the pandemic and all that stuff. But yeah, the fact that you have a camera that just moves all of a sudden, and, for example, just to do a movement that takes, I don't know, 5 seconds, which pretty long when you think about that in terms of animation. A lot of shots are gonna last maybe 2 seconds, but you go with that, and you go with but yeah, you have those things that you basically control yourself. There's a tool also that basically gives some curves to start with. Sometimes you go with the you get with you get something that just looks good with the default easing. You can tweak it to your taste and all. So yeah. So in this case, I had the camera just pulled towards dusk as it turned. Well, as he turned, because he's trying to get back from the previous shot. Actually, it's quite interesting. He's actually a lot more blue than it actually appears, part due to the color correction. I wanted to look more sepia, and the fact that the because it's set in the past, you have the bright light that's really warm. That you can see in the later shot. So it just felt more natural, and it turned out a lot more gray, especially if you look at the his first appearance. Like even in Blue Room, it just feels gray when compared. So yeah. So yeah, the actually I'll probably have a lot more time because the next panel has been cancelled. So if you have any questions that I can answer, it's gonna be pretty cool. Actually, one thing I can show, because there was the other shot where you had Celestia just shows up. It was quite interesting because the whole idea was to redo something I did on the false sunset shimmer. You had Celestia basically turning to smoke. She gets teleported, and yeah, with those effects, it takes a long time. Beginning of harmony scenes, deck 006. I think it was render 13. There we go. So you have this animation where I basically had a 3D model of Celestia and Luna that was posed exactly like that animation. And so what I did is basically just set it as smoke and put some turbulence and something explosive. So you'd have all the details of the smoke that would just show up. It's kind of grainy as a render. Doing the graining actually helped a lot. And the fact that it moved fast also really helped. But you have that smoke that just goes, and as it keeps going, it just starts to disappear. For that part, I did part just doing with the opacity of the smoke, and basically just to blend the two. What I did is that I put the smoke over top of Celeste and Luna for that one shot. And the whole animation was actually inspired. Because you have the one scene where you have sunset that just disappears, and it's actually if you look at it, there's it's quite interesting because the whole rig, you can see that our main was not modeled for that one. One thing I actually improved afterwards because I realized it kind of looks weird. What I did was I had the smoke, I put the outlines of the smoke and just blended between the two, and as it just went away, just got rid of the outline and just kept with the so it's pretty cool with that one shot because you had that and then you just focused on Celestia's shadow. It's quite interesting on that one as well, since it was a 3D background. It was smoke over top. Celestia here is actually just a 3D model of Celestia with her mane that actually flows. You even see her tail here, which was kind of misplaced intentionally. And you have the and then I held in that because I wanted to feel a bit more, just I wanted to linger on that one. So what I did at that point was that I realized, well, let's go and do something that's kind of similar with that. So you go with that, and you really feel like, she's getting grabbed. You already have the outline done with it's actually a plugin called Saber. It was actually designed for lightsabers, and I realized at some point, well, it can be used for something that's not straight. You can actually put it on a curve, and then I realized, well, let's go with the outline. And actually that one part was inspired by how the movie, the magic effects were all hand drawn, and I realized, well, I cannot do that myself. I just don't have the time to do that for all those frames, but with the budget I had. So I found the plugin that would actually do that, and I realized, well, can be used for magic, but can also be used for those teleportation effects. And as it actually grows on her, you actually get the overexposure on that one. You lose back the exposure. It fades away, and as you see the light from the sky that actually goes, you see the silhouette of her parents. Originally, actually, for that one shot, I think I only had dusk, and I realized, well, dawn should be there in some way. So I had dawn just animated to actually come in as it, and then you cut back to the, and actually that part, the smoke, instead of doing 2 smoke simulations, it just used the other one. I had some glow from the back, and that's pretty much it. It was quite interesting because in that case I needed to bend the smoke a bit and to make it actually fit the shape. The fact that they kept the same camera angle for both shots to actually match in continuity actually helped a lot. So yeah. Other questions? How difficult was it from moving from Flash to Toon Boom? One of the problems I had is that when you have a symbol, the symbol itself, you create a keyframe for that, but when you create a keyframe, you can actually replace it by another piece. So a symbol, let's go with, you can actually change your main for that cup for that time. So, oh right, the cup itself is actually 2 pieces. Oh, actually one of the things with those symbols, you don't have loops with Toon Boom. You basically have all the pieces. You can change the inside of the piece itself. But the problem is that doing that is a bit less intuitive. So you have that. The transform tool, for example, I could grab that piece of main and move it. And as I move it, it basically keeps doing the animation no matter what. When it goes to Flash, one of the things is that you have the move tool, which is, well, you have the transform tool and the move tool, and they basically do the same no matter what. So for example, you have that in the middle of the tween, so I can actually move that piece, and it's gonna do it in between by default. So you have that main that bounces, then goes away and comes back. When you go with Toon Boom and actually use that one cursor, it's actually gonna move for everything because it doesn't handle the keyframes. For keyframes, what you're gonna want to do is use that tool or those tools here, so you can actually move it in 3D space, and you can actually get the tweening between those 2 parts. And then to get rid of it, you just press on that button. There's also the fact that when you have, it mostly behaves like 3D software, but when you have settings for that, you have all the settings like position, rotation. Well, you have the rotation, the scale, the skew. But if I move it, it creates a new keyframe. That one particular case is going to move everything, but you can actually move the position to be at a different to be at the different key. It's going to create a new key that just means, well, it's going to make that one point here just means for that one part, and then that one that means everything else. But you don't know that until you open that part. With Flash, one of the cool things is that when you have a point, it just means everything. If I think I'll use ray tracing for light, actually, funny thing, I've been using ray tracing since 2013. Actually, if you look at Project Thundercloud, actually I have Project Thundercloud open here. If you look at, it was not very good for the time. If you look, for example, you have Derpy here that reflects. It was all done with, actually it was done with Blender Legacy, and that with retracing was not the best. And There was also I tried to replicate the look of that ray tracing for other scenes. So you had shadows everywhere. You had the characters casting shadows, and I realized, well, it doesn't look the best. Like it clashes with the rest of the scenes. So I, at the time I was doing my best, but yeah, that was ray tracing back then. There was next project like the Fall of Sunset Shimmer. All the 3D backgrounds were ray traced, and what I did was that I went on Photoshop afterwards. For example, if I look at just at that painting here, I did some tweaks to make it more paint-like, so the corners were a bit more blurry on the side like that. It really felt like there was some kind of paintbrushes. That one was also ray traced, and I did what I did was I used the depth map to basically just extrude to get basically just get some kind of sense of depth. So I have guess I can show you the matte paintings for scenes. So opening, I think it was 8. There we go. No, not 8. It was 9. There we go. And the matte painting looked like, actually that's the depth, DMP. So I had multiple layers. So I had that for the diffuse. I had, oh yeah, right then. That's for the, so you had the reflection as well. You had the vignette, because I wanted some vignette effect. That one was just a placeholder for scale. You had the volumetrics on that layer, the depth for reflections. So you had all the layers combined, and all those were actually based on render. The render itself looked like this, with ray tracing. Oh, okay, no. So it looked fine. Like the reflections were kind of weird, in part because I basically had the sphere light, told it to ignore shadows, so it would actually pass through it, because I thought that the ground itself needed to be a bit more sparkly. So I had that was all ray traced, and took a while to render that. Date modified and date created. That one render took 4 hours, just that one single frame. So when it came time to do the matte painting itself, that one was the mock-up. I realized at some point, well, looks good, but could look better. I think the preview was the preview itself for the animation was placed over top of the placeholder for that. So then afterwards I had the render for the compositing. So I had all of that was ray traced. It was and at the time, the reason why I went with those techniques instead of doing the whole sequence and just doing it within the comp is that at the time I only had this computer here, which pretty good, but I mean ray tracing back then we didn't have optics, we didn't have actually real-time denoising was not a thing yet. So having shots that looked good, it was quite a nightmare because it would take long to get renders. There was shots, for example, the one shot with the hourglass, it was all ray traced as well. So you have the ray tracing and you really see the refraction on the glass. I needed to have Celestia in the shot, so Celestia was just an animation on a card that was basically I just did some shading that would match the rest of the scene, and I had her just walk on the card, just bend the card to have a bit of. So you see, if you look at the hourglass, you really see that her horn actually refracts in it. as it turns, you really see that you see the footsteps as well. It's quite interesting as well. The sand in that shot is a scam. Like it goes from one, instead of simulating the sand, what I did was I just rotated in a way that the hourglass covered it, and I just swapped it for a piece that actually had that here and the thing here, so you kind of feel like actual sand, and I just added some particles here. There was also that one shot that was also ray traced. It was kind of a nightmare to do because the whole shot, at some point I was realized, well, it's not very complex. I could maybe just cheat the lights, and then I realized that all the metal here, it reflects, so I couldn't just cheat it. I had a 3D model just used for reference, and I also had reflections of that 3D model here. So as the camera just pulled in. So all of that also ray tracing. There was also a couple of scenes that I did with without ray tracing. For example, that one shot is just basically just the model of Canterlot texture on a sphere, and then I just painted over and just added some towers in OpenGL. They don't look the best, but you don't look at them, you look at the moon. So as the moon just goes up, and I cut to just this one model, which is actually just the viewport. I wonder I could actually open up the I think it was breakdown 2. Oh, 3. What? Did I render them out of order? Oh, right, I rendered them in 2 passes. So what it actually looked like was basically just this. At that angle, the metal, you wouldn't see too much of the internal reflections. I had Celestia's shadow, which was basically just 3D model that was casting shadows. A funny glitch with Maya that's with the viewport is that if you set something transparent enough, but not all the way through, it actually casts shadows that were entirely opaque. So I could actually have a model there, put the 2D animation for Celestia on top, and it would just match. So I had that in the scene itself. I put preview. Oh, preview. And the actual preview looked like
Done.
Like this, and that was it. So you had the in the viewport itself. The viewport, there's a limit. You can only have 16 lights that actually cast shadows. Afterwards, it doesn't work. I think after 16 in viewport, they just don't shine at all. So I had to count the number of lights I could put. I had the light from the moon. I had another help light to just see a bit better. I had lights from Canterlot. And the problem also with those lights is that the softness is equally distributed, and also if it's too if you want something soft, you're gonna have to lower the resolution because it actually softens just a bit. You don't have much control over that. So for sharp light from the sun, it just looks fine. There was also a limitation back then. I had my old graphics card, which was really bad at rendering stuff at 4K, so some of those shots were just 2K. Then I tried to upscale them to look better. I had to disable ambient occlusion, which was just screen space based. In screen space, ambient occlusion just looks fine. In video games, they basically use that to get some good context shadows. But yeah, you had that shot, which, since it was set pretty dark, you had some, actually put a point light just to try to get some fake reflection here, because metal doesn't reflect, metal only reflects lights and not objects around it, because it's a real-time render. And I needed to kind of match the look of that retraced shot. And actually, it's a ray traced, but the only thing that's ray traced in real time is the actual balcony. Everything else that's behind it is either an already ray traced picture that I painted over and put on a sphere that actually just tracks with the movement, or if you look at the towers that are closest, it's a really bad render in the viewport, and it looks fine if you look if you look at it in movement. And even then, I think just because I use Arnold, which is, I mean, it's fast for what it is, but it's still pretty slow in the grand scheme of thing. But it still took forever to render. I think it was 10 to 15 minutes a frame, and I had to actually outsource the whole thing. So doing that was quite a nightmare. And actually, yes, I can actually render. That's a breakdown one. That's oh yeah, I think it was MSI Tower. Actually, I'm gonna open the shot just to show you how it was it. What? Oh no, that's not the. That's MS1 or MSI Tower. Yep, that one. So I had this scene, and that one's kind of, it's not the best example because that one was used. It's actually an older technique that I used for that one. I don't even know if that's gonna open in Toon Boom 20. We're live. There we go. So one of the things I needed to do was to basically track for Celestia to match the reference rig I had that basically looked like this, and then follow the movement of the camera. It's quite interesting as well for the actual movement, because the idea was that I needed to keep Celestia in that corner of the frame, and as she turned, she needed to still stand on that corner instead of actually rotating while being in the middle of the frame. So when she looks farther away, it actually feels like she's looking at the corner like that. So I had that part. As it continues, it was pretty good as well because I had some sort of reference for the direction of the lighting. Although for that part, I basically just tweaked it myself. You had Celestia here, and one of the things you can see is that corner here with the circle, which actually makes sense for that piece because I needed to have something to actually track, to look at. So what I did was that I had render of everything as well, but the center of the body was actually that, and I actually used that as a reference for what the rest of the movement would look like. I also, since the hoofs were standing on the ground like that, what I could do was that I could just basically match the ones that were 3D modeled like this, and that was it. It was a bit tricky because it goes with the frame itself, but when it goes outside of the frame, what do I do? The fact that I had the circle that was always in the frame as a reference also really helped, and the fact that you don't really see it outside, like you don't see that the legs break when it's outside of the frame, so it doesn't really matter. I'll say that again and again. If it's outside of the frame, don't worry about it. Like, you want things to make sense in the frame and make sense with how they correlate to other things that you've seen previously. For example, if you see a character that just walks out of the frame and the character just stops looking directly, like doesn't match the eye line, it's gonna be broken a bit. But in this case, you don't really care because they're outside of the frame. They don't need to be, so the camera just pulls and rotates. one thing that kind of bothers me with that shot is the entire timing of the shot is all driven by the background plate because of the nature of the shot. So I had to actually figure it out myself before actually doing anything. It was nice as well because the end of the shot, instead of keeping on that shot, just cutting quickly, I actually held on the shot for a bit longer. So you look at that shot and then you have the camera that just pulls up, just really slowly tracks in, then rotates in 3D space. And yeah, there's some stuff that's still broken about it. Looking back, I could have done it better, but you know, it's the past. And it's kind of funny because the way that I did the muzzle piece, I basically had one line that is just tweened with shape tweens to make it work. And yeah, it was quite interesting as well because you see the sun just sets, and it was quite interesting because Canterlot just goes outside of a frame for that. And as it goes outside of a frame, I don't have to worry about the direction of the light changing. I just have to worry about the direction of the light changing on this. And then you just have the stars just go out. And as they go in. You see, oh, it's night. Looking back, those stars could have been brighter, but that happens. And you can see as well with the lighting inside, there's the fact that all those contact shadows were a nightmare. One of the techniques I used back then, when I realized how grainy the indirect lighting would be, I realized, well, let's blur the indirect light, just work, and kind of help to pull some kind of look out of it. You can also see the tiles that are basically just one tile that is looped around. They don't look the best, but you don't look too much at them. You just complete the whole thing. And she goes, and as she goes up, you can see a bit the movement where she just goes, no, and you see her head just moves a bit left and right. The fact that the rig is 2.5D with those layers and all, the fact that I could actually have the head rotate like that also helped a bit to add some dimension to the whole thing. Also, one cool thing is that since the layering 2D stuff on top of 3D stuff, you have some pieces that don't line up the best. The fact that this piece here with the railing doesn't actually cover up in the frame, I didn't have to worry about that part at all. The only masking thing I had to worry about is previously in the shot, where we have that part of the railing that kind of goes over her, and that's it. Originally, one of the things I wanted to have was to have a camera that just pulled up as it continued, but I realized, well, it kind of gets a bit old. Like, you get it. Like, the camera turned around her, she's sad. You don't need to hammer it up, and you have the camera just moves up, because then at that point you see from her point of view as she looks up. So it's a lot of implied movement at that point. You get the movement where she goes, and actually I could actually show that shot. I think it was this one. There we go. Scene. Oh right, it needs to. Yeah, it needs to convert the sound files. How many Toon Boom instances I open? 1, 2, 3. Oh my god, I have 7 instances that are open. Oh, and the funny thing is that the rig itself starts at frame 100. I basically the 99 first frame to basically myself to keep, for example, if I have mount loops. And also have things like Celestia's main that actually on loop as well. But the thing is that since I start from that point, it actually basically just tweens from one to the other, like that. So it's kind of funny seeing how it starts. Guess I can show what it looks like from. If you look, for example, at one running shot, basically things just go in place. Just you actually have that with 3D animation as well, because basically you keep the first frames for just setting a basic pose to start simulations. Sometimes it starts at frame 1000, but the fact that you have those frames just looks silly, and then it just snaps something serious. I don't know, it just looks ridiculous in for me. So yeah, one of the things that kind of helped for that one shot is that if you look at her chest piece, actually I have no idea what it's supposed to be. It's kind of like a crown, but well, I mean, it's kind of like a weird necklace made out of metal that I don't really know how she would put anyway. Like, it's a solid piece, so I have no idea. But yeah, just the fact that she goes, and you really feel kind of like she's breathing, and she's about to cry and all. So it just goes and leaves, and then the head just follows with the movement, and as it goes up, then snaps back. So just having the layer of movement with the head that rotates as well as going up, but not directly in sync. Just the fact that you get that really helps with the movement. Then you have the mouth movement as well, and I also had some sound effects for that as well, so that really helped. You have the blinks as well, so. And you can do that in Flash as well. Problem with Flash is that the way that the eyes are set, you basically have to either set it to as its own independent movement, like inside a symbol, and then move that symbol and try to sync it up, or you basically have to do a lot of mid keyframes for that. It's really, really annoying. So just the fact that they had all of that could work on their own with the movement, the head movement going in 3D space, just doing that really helped with Toon Boom. It's I look back at Luna's determination and then compare it with the Fall of Sunset Shimmer, and it feels like a night and day difference. No pun intended. Also, it kind of helps also when she looks down, like, what have I done? Well, instead of just going, what have I done? Just that layer of movement also helps. It's mostly just trying to go with acting, when one of the things, for example, you look down because you want to remember something. I've heard some people say, well, if you look left, it's you're lying. If you look right, it's that you're actually remembering stuff. It's not really the case. It's mostly just language that some people are gonna have, like internal language when they animate. Like, so you subconsciously look at that and you realize, oh, every time that you look left, he was actually lying. Doing that like that is kind of helps, although it's not supposed to be too obvious because you have a lying character, and you want to punch, you want to reveal that it's a lie later. So people will go with that. I've seen some one case. There was an interview. There was a guy that was basically saying, "Oh, no, I've never done that." And as he was saying, "I've never done that," it was really stupid. But he was doing, I think, he was actually doing yes with his head right before saying no, and he couldn't control it because it was subconscious. So just doing that with just the animation just make it feel a bit more popping, because a lot of people think with the show style needs to look like the part, and they don't. They want to make it look like a part. For example, you look with the show, you look at just the bouncing, it just feels right, but kind of feels stiff. Like, I'm looking back at the that animation, the acting itself feels stiff, like she's looking she's looking down. There's not a lot like with her intention. She's just like, no, like, I feel good. Like, just having tea with my friends, and that's it. Like, no further intention. She doesn't feel like good. She doesn't. I don't know. She doesn't look at that teacup she's thinking. I don't know. She's looking at teacup like maybe someone else would want some. Like you can add that kind of layer, and it adds some animation to do. But just having, for example, just those things, and for example, being awkward, like she just looks everywhere, just also adds a lot of layer of acting with that. Just staging the camera here kind of helps as well. So it's a lot of stuff, and I've seen a lot of people wonder like how do I animate, and it's a lot of stuff like looking at how people act. You can look at the language of cinema, although I'd be careful with that, because one of the problems with looking at the language of cinema is that you make movies that look like other movies instead of making movies that feel like experiences that you have. Like I can look at shots I've done taking, well, for example, that Warner. You're kind of thinking, well, it's good because there's a Warner, right? No, like the Warner actually makes it more interesting visually, like it makes it more cinematic, but it doesn't actually. It's not because there's a Warner that's important. It's like how the Warner actually interacts with the rest of the film. Like you look at the shot where you have Celestia basically just realizing she has a lot of shame. She doesn't want to show her face, not even to the camera. It's quite interesting because it's the story from her point of view. So she doesn't want to even look at herself. So you have that one shot where you have that. You have that shame. She doesn't show her face. She doesn't. You don't really know how she's feeling, and in a way she doesn't really know how she should feel. As the camera slowly pulls in, you see that she looks down, and if I just went with that shot and just copied it for another project, I don't know, my Starlight Glimmer project, I just have Starlight just looking at sunset and she feels bad. What does it add? Like, what does it give to the character itself? So, thinking of how you storyboard a project really, really makes it, it's the language of cinema that actually speaks here, which I think is very interesting. So yeah, is there any question? Because otherwise I'm gonna ramble and love stuff. What else? Good talk. Oh yeah, one thing I really like in terms of lighting is putting the light behind the character. In a way, because it actually shows a bit more the silhouette of the character. You really see those outlines. In that one, actually, I was doing that with Luna's Determination, which I thought, well, it looks pretty cool. Like, and you don't really think of the outline of the character as a rim light. So having that feature, let's see a shot where I did. So you can actually see that it kind of feels like it matches the lighting, but it's was there another example? Oh yeah, there was also the scene of sunset. It's pretty interesting as well. You look at that model of Canterlot. How did I do that? Torch? Oh, I think you're meaning the one where you have Celestia running. It's actually quite interesting because the actual animation is actually real fire. Oh, on the guard's head. Oh, okay. So it's actually pretty cool because I had the scene open. So one of the things I needed to do, scenes opening, I think it's 4. No, 4, 5. There we go. So one of the things I needed to do was to actually match the, basically I had the guard that, So basically, one of the things I had is that I had the guard is walking in, and as he was walking in, I needed to have a reference for the. So seriously, there we go. So one of the things I had is that I had the just a 3D model of the guard just sliding in. Basically, I needed him to have some just some bounce lighting. He was set to not actually appear in that frame. So I had the spotlight was actually animated to actually rotate. As the spotlight rotated, you could actually have the you could actually see a bit more the background. So I had the matte painting itself, which was basically matte painting was basically just a 3D render that I painted over. So I had that matte painting and I needed to have some light. So what I did was I actually rendered with that spotlight. So it was kind of blurry as well. Oh yeah, I kind of changed. Oh, I'm stupid. I cannot control. So I had all the frames of the. It was pretty cool as well. I had the volumetrics and I had the light that actually reflect on the ground. So I had the pass of just that one lights impact and everything. So it was interesting because that way I'll only need to degrain that light and that was it. And I could just add it on top of the background plate. 6. Actually, I guess I can open up the composition for that shot. Project, don't save. Scene. Opening 6. I hope all the right. I hope all the files are gonna be there. Actually did it on the. Actually, I did it on the my other computer back when I was not even using that hard drive. I was using that hard drive, but not set on D. It was set on C. So. It's warm. So I had the camera movement was basically just actually just moving the matte painting down and actually just doing some perspective shift. So basically I had the light was composited. So in the spotlight itself, what I did, I should have done it the other way around, but I did the 2D animation of the character to match with the spotlight itself when he turned his head. So actually, can open up that part. So you have that. I also rendered that one with perspective cam. So you see that the corners here are actually a bit skewed. Basically, when you do a render like that, you can actually just move it up to kind of create some kind of fake panorama effect. So you have this layer here. You had a layer just that one was the is that one? Yeah, that one was the background itself. Oh right, the window itself. Rim light from that one. I had a shape layer to darken it. And then I have the light itself from the balcony. I had the light from the reflection itself. I had the pass for the guard that was layered above the light. Looking back, maybe it was not the best technique, but that happens. But I had the beauty of basically just the layer of the character itself. It was I think that one shape was that one shape was the mask itself, because without that shape basically I would have needed to find a way to actually make it behind the background like that. So instead of actually cutting the background in two plates and having to deal with two of those compositions, I had a mask, so it was basically just be put behind it. There was a layer of dust particles, and those dust particles were actually influenced by the light itself. And by being influenced by the light. They would only shine when the light was on that spotlight. And then I have the light itself that is added, and that light, so it's basically light from that background itself, just adding it on top of everything just worked. So when the character just moved, you basically had you basically had the light itself would just match, and you could have the shadows itself themselves there as well. So and if I remove the dust particles, you can see a bit why it just doesn't look right without them. So just adding them like that, pretty cool. Those are nulls. There's a light here. The light was just a light just to imply that he was going from a room that was lit from a room that is not. Because I realized, well, they don't want to put bright lights in parts of the castle that just nobody are gonna walk in during the night. Had some fog, which was basically just a fog light from, if you take it out, just basically just a fog light coming from a sky. And since basically a light doesn't impact the other one, just adding them like that could work. So I had them back like that. I had no, I got rid of those. The final one, I added some flare just over top of that, just to make it a bit more real. Although I kind of clipped them, so it doesn't look quite real. And what I did was I just animated it to basically just track with this movement and just turn off when it would be taken out. And then I have the dust particles, and those dust particles are just animated to just show up when the light would show up, and that's it. Then you just add all those layers back together, and then you have just a little layer of bloom over top of everything. It just works. I actually use a technique similar to that with another scene that I thought was actually a pretty much cooler example of that, because I think the guard one was the first one, but when you have Sunset that actually just walks and she just runs to basically the light that she casts, you can see the shadows everywhere. Basically the light itself was actually just from another spotlight like that. I had the card with I guess I could show you as well. It's I think so. Sunset opening. Sunset intro. There we go. Originally, it was just supposed to go with just a spotlight with some masks, and I realized, well, it doesn't look right. So I added those, just that extra layer. I'm gonna open the composition in that one. Sunset intro 2. Open up project, don't save. Scene intro 2. There we go. Let's go with quarter. Fighting will be a villain in G5. I think so. I think the only generation without villains with G3. Like, Tails technically had antagonists. Like, no big baddie who wants to rule the world. But yeah, I think it makes sense that it would have a villain. I don't know if... pretty sure the movie is gonna have one. Like, it's pretty rare to have a movie that doesn't have an antagonist somewhere. Oh, there we go. So the reflection itself... Oh, wait, that's not reflection. The reflection itself is a separate layer from everything else that was just added. One of the things when it comes to compositing is that you have the diffuse and then you have the specular on top of it with the adding blend mode. So it basically just adds the reflection on top, and that's it. The light itself was... It's quite funny because the light doesn't even cover everything. It's basically just this layer that was added, and I had to use some upscaling just to make it fit. But yeah, it's basically just this light, and basically since the background was a matte painting based on 3D model, what I did was that I animated the actually I have the do I have oh, I don't think I made but yeah, the matte painting itself was based on this 3D model. I rendered it with some pretty good lighting. It took a while to render that plate, so instead of having to re-render everything with the extra light, I just rendered that extra light alone and just added it. I also rendered it at half res because I realized, well, nobody's gonna even see it that much, like it's very soft. And that was it. So you can see a bit the actually, can I crank up the exposure? So you can see a bit how the light itself just does that. So adding sunset on top of it just worked. And as she turned her head, since she was casting shadows on top of herself, just adding it back was just pretty easy. I think I had to... did I have to? No, I don't think I ended up needing to retime it. Which I consider a blessing, to be honest, because retiming the lights to match animation is just tedious. It was pretty cool because Celestia also casts a shadow. You don't see it because pretty cool feature with most 3D renderers. You can set something to exist. You don't see it, but it casts shadows, and in this case, it didn't cast any reflections. But just being able to do that was like game changer here. I didn't have any volumetrics on that one, which was also a game. Yeah, also really helped to save time. So when I added it back to the original plate, I could just change the exposure to my taste. Actually, get the color to my taste. I put it green because if you look at if you look at the first Equestria girls, their magic is green. But if I wanted to change the hue just to my taste, I can just go with saturation. Actually, let's increase the saturation. Change the hue. I can have, for example, go with red. I can go with something a bit more blue. I'm gonna go with something purple. Of course, here it's not that physically accurate. I would need it to have something that was perfectly white and then tint it, because the whole idea is that it's a light that basically if you shine green light over top, something green is gonna show up green, but if you put it on top of something red, it's gonna show it as black. So I would have needed to go with something white, but back on that was already sure of what I needed. So I had that. I had one for reflection as well, because you see that the spot that she had on the ground also mattered, because you see a reflection, but you also see that on the reflection on the ground, you also have the diffuse that is reflected by it. So I needed to add them separately. Also needed to add sunset. It would be on top of the reflection. So, because one of the things I've seen, I actually have seen that on full legit productions. Like actually, the one that bothers me the most is the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. They have a master shot with all of their musicians just singing together and playing. They just put it at the end of some of their segments. And the thing is that since the needed to have some reflection on the ground, instead of actually having the reflection come separately, they would just put the reflection, just reduce the opacity, so you could see through reflection behind the characters themselves. I was actually looking at another episode with actually was looking at MLP. They also did that issue as well, where you had reflections would basically just pass through. So you'd see behind reflections, which you shouldn't be able to, even on shiny floors. There's also some stuff like the roughness in itself, like because if you look at the reflection on the door itself, well, the door being reflected, it's not perfectly sharp, like it's blurry as it gets along, so I needed to replicate it with sunset as well. So just the fact that I had the shadow and the reflection separately like that just saved a lot of work. With 3D renderers, when you go with renders, for example, you get the beauty, but you also have the diffuse. I can separate it, diffuse direct and diffuse indirect. So this diffuse is just direct lighting, like no bounce light at all. Diffuse and indirect, it's basically just bouncing lights. See a bit, for example, the corners like that, like the corners of the door. Positive is just specular direct, just basically just reflections, like you see reflections here and that's it. Then specular and direct, basically just reflections of everything else. Being able to separate it with modern renderers just save a lot of work, instead of having to find a way to cut it, like to basically separate the reflection of the floor. It made the DMP just so much easier. So I had the DMP of the diffuse, for example, just looked good like that. Also had some fake volumetrics, because back then I was not entirely sure if I could actually have physical volumetrics, so I just faked them. But it's basically just drawing a shape and just soften it with the smudge tool. I had reflections as well that were basically just cutting out the reflection to my taste, and basically just combining them and putting the characters and just matching the shading just worked really well. And then once everything was done, what I could do was just adding a little dose of bloom so everything would just blend together. And also had it, I think, oh, on that one, no, I didn't end up putting lens distortion. I'm very guilty of that in a lot of shots with the beginning of Harmony, like with the beginning of Harmony. If you look at shots, for example, the shot of this destruction of the Alicorn Empire. Yeah, I don't really have anything that's straight, but there's actually a lot of lens distortion that actually worked. There's a lot of distortion also in close-ups, and the idea was that I wanted to actually emulate the look of a film and kind of emulate the look of how we look at things, so it helped a lot. But you know, it's mostly my own personal style. If you want something that just looks very straight, don't go with it. So yeah, got any questions? We got about 15 minutes more. Like, guess I could talk about previous projects. Yeah, that's the thing. I've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes, and I'm not entirely sure what else to talk about. That I haven't talked about yet. Yeah, actually, there was one scene in the beginning of Harmony that I'm gonna have to show it later, because it actually ties into my Starlight Glimmer project. So yeah, check marks are for transparency. The problem is that if you go with a plain color, it's kind of hard to know if it's actually if it's actually transparent. So having a pattern behind that's actually, you can see the pattern and you know exactly what the pattern is. Just being able to follow it, you can see exactly what's supposed to be behind, and you know right away if it's supposed to be transparent or not. Some websites are gonna put the checker mark behind the transparent picture, just to show that it's a transparent picture for people who want to buy it. And the problem that they have with that is that when you try to download it, you also get the checker mark, so people feel like they've been cheated out of it. Kind of scummy, but I mean, that's the nature of the internet. But one of the tools I was trying to work on that actually covered a bit. I guess I could open up the original file later. But having a camera that moves in 3D space but dependent on the character animation instead of the other way around is a game changer for me. And there's a scene I was working on. Scenes. Scene. I ended up finding a way to actually get the there we go. So one of the things I wanted to have was to actually have Starlight actually moving in a 3D background, and I ended up making a tool that actually exports the 3D movement. It actually imports it in Blender. So as she moves around in the room, the camera actually follows. So I had the script editor, and actually allows me to actually export the camera as a JSON and to actually read it. So let me open up the 3D model. Pretty cool because once you have the 3D model with the actual camera movement, you can actually just render them separately. There we go. And you actually have the camera movement that actually matches. Actually, the final result is my Patreon. And just the fact that you have the whole thing was done with they're called animation nodes. Basically, you plug in you go with the text file reader, you split the text because the whole thing is a JSON. It's basically just text, just coordinates. It's kind of boring, and I didn't want to have to manually type those things. And the original solution that I had was to make an Excel spreadsheet. I found a tool that actually read JSONs and basically converted them to Excel spreadsheets. And I realized, well, it's gotta be tedious to actually have to do that all the time. So I ended up having a tool with animation nodes that actually read that. And because Toon Boom pretty cool, it actually lets you actually go with camera. You have the peg that actually controls everything and just exports all those coordinates with the script. I have no idea what it was meant for, but it was clearly not meant for Blender, so I had to actually make it work with that. So just having that opportunity like that is like a game changer for me. Can have a long continuous shot, and it actually tracks, because one of the problems I had with this one scene, since it was basically based on the play blast, I had to actually try to match the camera movement by hand with one of the pegs. That was basically just trying to match the so now that I actually have the control within Toon Boom, it's so much easier, it's so much straightforward. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm really glad that I'll be able to explore more. Like as I've shown earlier with Celestia, just having the fact that I had no control over that was quite disappointment for that one shot, since I had everything preview. Could actually have I could basically have the preview within my timeline in Premiere. Basically, just make it match the tone. Like if I felt the pacing was kind of off, I could actually change it within that one software instead of having to change within Maya and trying to redo the whole animation Toon Boom. So, I'm quite glad of that one change. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking forward with my next project. Like, I'm kind of hoping to get it done by the end of the year. With the pandemic and all, pretty much all of my plans were kind of shattered. So I have no idea if I'm going to be able to show it at the convention at all. I have no idea. Like, right now with vaccines, I don't know what's going to be my spot. Like, I got asthma, so it's one factor that actually influences how the virus is going to affect me or not if I get it. And I've been doing my best to get the virus. Like, I've been staying at home as much as I could. Pretty sad. Like, I haven't seen my mom in months. I don't know. I'm feeling lonely. I'm really glad that people in line are here so I can chat with them. But no conventions for a long time. So just the fact that we have those online events like that, just a game changer. Yeah, I have no idea what's my next convention. Like, hopefully we can get the whole pandemic sort of figured out by 2022. I'm kind of hoping to be there for HarmonyCon. Now that they have a new hotel, that's closer from the airport, so I think it's either a walking distance or they have a shuttle. And last time I've been to a convention that was in a hotel that was right next to the airport was Canterlot in 2013. It was really long. Like back then it was right after first Project Thundercloud. So, and those cons, since the hotel is small, the experience is never the same. And I kind of like that cozy feel. Like, there's something really oddly charming with smaller cons. So yeah, don't know if it's gonna be TrotCon. Like, there's some talks that maybe they're gonna be able to give the vaccine to everybody by July or June. I don't remember, or even May. The thing with that is that you have 2 doses. You have and they have to wait 2 weeks. And there's single dose vaccines also. They're figuring out who is gonna get what, because who needs what. And I think the single dose vaccine is slightly less effective. So, but yeah, I'm not gonna talk about that stuff. Even though, actually, it's a funny thing. I'm gonna just stand up and just show you one of the. I had that back in college, that whole biology book, and it was only first part. We had another one, it was in green, and just give you a good idea of the thickness. I think it's index, sources, glossary, about 1,300 pages. Like, my original plan was to go in engineering, and I realized at some point, well, let's try to do something a bit, because back then my only dream was to make like smartphones and tablets and all. Realized, well, people are really doing that. I'm not really contributing too much. So just the fact that I could go and do those animated projects, and the fact that I had basically that I could use, for example, just that programming skills I had, thanks to, well, I had back then we programmed some big 24s. Just being able to have some programming skills to actually reverse engineer that code to actually make camera exporter that actually export the FOV. Having those skills really helped me. I'm just looking at there was another project I wanted to do for actually from another convention that I thought was pretty cool as well. Although I talk about it later, like it's I wanted to keep it mostly a secret for now, but being able to use those skills for pony stuff. For in another case, I was trying to look if I could actually get that pipeline for studios, because I've seen a lot of productions that were actually using Maya for with Toon Boom and Maya. But the problem with the way that Maya interfaces with Toon Boom is that they basically they create a new scene for every single frame, and that whole sequence is about 650 frames. So you had to create 650 times the same set. It would take at least 30 seconds just loading the set for every frame. And we realized, well, it's not the best approach, so just that new export tool that I made on a production pipeline would probably save a lot of time. The fact it works with Blender as well, because a lot of production moved to Blender because it's free. And Blender now it's really, really good. Like now just the fact that with a QD map, like I can actually go and render with the nearly instantly. Like right now it's just compiling shaders and it's done. Almost. There we go. Just doing that instantly, it's like a game changer. When I was working with Maya, actually I'm still working with Maya, but having renders that would take 4 hours for a single frame were just way too much. For some of those shots, like the result, like looking back at some of those shots, for example, the one shot where you have the inside of the tower of the Unicorn Kingdom, it's really blurry, it's really grainy, because all the denoising techniques that I had, because I wanted the render to just look better, all of them, they actually made the render just look fuzzy. Like, it's not fuzzy in the parts that matter the most, but it didn't look right. So just the fact that we have, for example, Blender that actually has actual proper denoising, that actually understands better the shape of things. The fact that it has Eevee, that is a real-time renderer that actually like I can actually move a camera in 3D space. Like, it's kind of sluggish. Like, if you had it in a video game, you would be disappointed. But the fact that I can actually move the camera at that speed instead of having to wait 15 minutes just to get a single frame, or the way that progressive render works, just the fact that I don't have to worry about that is a game changer. I can see how reflection work on that ground. I can see pretty much every effect that's actually needed. It's one thing that back in 2013 we didn't have. So just the fact that we have those tools now to just improve pony projects without having to add too much production time or to add too much cost in terms of hardware. Like, that thing actually works on my previous computer that I got back in 2015. Like, it's a Intel 4790, which it's pretty good, but like it's not it's not groundbreaking. So just having being able to do that with lesser tools really helps for those projects, and it's kind of why I want to encourage more people. Like, it's more accessible than ever. We have Toon Boom now that a lot of people just understand better. Blender is free. Flash, well, I mean, it's still Flash and it kind of sucks, but Flash is still there. We have more understanding of the software than ever. So yeah, I really recommend it to people. If there's any takeaway, like, I've shown how I do things. It doesn't mean that I'm the one who knows the most. It just shows that, I found my way to do things. So if other people want to contribute by finding other techniques that just work, for example, Blender with Eevee, just the fact that I can use that, actually LMX, Lumix. I still don't know how to. I've seen him in person. I still don't know how to pronounce his name correctly. But yeah, he actually introduced me to SSGI. Like he was testing things with for an animation, and he was sending the link on Twitter, and I was really excited. He showed me another tool that I ended up not really using because I realized, well, it works for him, but not for me. But the just the fact that we have those things, because SSGI is screen space global illumination. Basically, those bounce lighting, you basically estimate them based on what's on the screen. So having all of that as a tool to speed things up, because the fact that it's already on the screen, and you can basically just base it on what you already have, you speed up renders by a lot. So having all of that is like a game changer for me. Like that scene, just the fact that rendered quickly is as a game changer. There's a Ponyville set that was originally supposed to be done in Arnold, and the problem with that shot was that it would take 45 minutes to render, and when I moved to Eevee with the SSGI, it takes 2 minutes and looks better. Actually have some renders as well that I posted, some on Twitter, some on Patreon, because I didn't want to leave the best stuff. I didn't want to only just give table scraps to Patreon supporters. So yeah, just having that as those tools to make animation, just game changer. There's some techniques that I've learned while working on full production as well that I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, actually that's that's the takeaway. Like if you have a vision for a project and you think you could do it, try it. Like it doesn't cost much. Like probably the Adobe suite that's kind of expensive, so you can start in Blender if you really don't want to go. If you want to start with something small, there's Toon Harmony that actually offers student licenses. I think Adobe also offers student licenses. So yeah, that's I think it's pretty cool. So it's been 2 hours and there's already the closing ceremonies for the con. So yeah, the zebras in G5. Oh, I don't know actually. They're actually in the season 10 comics. So, but I haven't read them. I've heard it was pretty good, but I actually need to look into it. So yeah. So where's the button to end the stream? Alrighty. So I'll see you later. Actually, I have no idea when's my next stream. So see ya.